Hi everyone, welcome to Play Hooky with me. My name is Roz and today I want to share with you the Infinity Granny Square and Rectangle. This really is the easiest pattern for beginners because it doesn't involve much counting and you only need to know how to chain and double crochet to make this blanket. Along with the tutorials on how to do both of these shapes, I'm also going to add an important tips section to show you how to ensure that your square and rectangles stay perfectly straight. And there's a cool little hack in there on how to avoid frogging if you miss a stitch. So be sure to check that out. As always, there are timestamps below so you can jump to your point of interest. So yeah, let's go ahead and play some hooky. For yarn and hook for this, there's really not much to say about this. It's basically whatever yarn you want to use and just take that yarn and see what hook size is recommended for it and go with it. I would recommend, if you want this to work up very quickly, a nice worsted weight or an Aran. This is an Aran. This works up very quickly. I believe a 5mm hook is required for that. And like I said, it works up very fast. The one here that I'm working on for my personal project, this is the equivalent to a sport weight or a light worsted weight yarn. So I'm using a 4mm, or I like to use a 3.75, but the required hook size for this is a 4mm. Before you get started on your granny square or rectangle, this works for both. I wanted to show you these samples. They were both done up with the same amount of rounds, the same hook size, the same stitch count. As you can see, the sample on the left is a lot straighter than the one on the right. And the only difference between these two is that with each round on the left, I flipped my work over. That means for round 1, I started on the right side. Round 2, I started on the wrong side and just flipped back and forth, back and forth. The sample on the right, I worked in rounds continuously, just attaching and staying on the right side for the entire thing. And unfortunately, I came up with this wave happening. I have read articles before that say you don't need to flip your work to get a nice straight square, so I did try to use those tips with this sample and it didn't work. And what were those tips for this? Well, one of the tips was to condense your stitches where you don't have chains in between the clusters and keep your corners to 2 chains rather than 3. Did that. And starting rounds on different sides each time, did that as well, and I still came up with this wonky square. So it's easy enough to flip if you're working with multiple colors of yarn and transitioning colors, but what if you're working with one skein? So I worked up 2 more samples, this time using a variegated yarn that just transitions color within the skein. And as you can see, unfortunately, when I worked around and around in the same on the same side, I got that wave happening again. The center isn't twisting, that's good, but if you're really wanting things to stay straight without any blocking or fuss, flipping your work with each round is the way to go. I am going to show you how you can do both, just in case you can live with these edges and you want to block that out. I know if you're working with a skein that transitions colors, you're going to want to keep that flow. But I have to admit, I really like the pattern that I got with this when I was flipping it back and forth. Just to recap, all you need to do to avoid the waves from happening is to simply flip your work over with each round. Nothing else. You don't have to worry about anything else. No certain area to start. Just flip it back and forth and you'll be good to go. Here is a really quick and easy hack in case you've been working on several rounds and then you discover that you've missed a stitch. Here you can see I only did 2 bars instead of 3. If you don't want to go back and frog it, and quite frankly, I wouldn't even worry about it too much, but if you've seen it and you can't unsee it, here is a quick and easy fix. What I like to do is just go into the area, pull the round above, pull it to the side so you can see that bar fairly easily. Go ahead and grab the same color yarn that you're wanting to fix and just loop it over your hook, pull it through, and do a slip stitch. I'm not knotting anything. This is holding it in place well enough for me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a double crochet and attach it down here at the same bar or same area as these other 2 double crochets. Yarn over, working into that same spot, working on the front, not going to the back. Just do your double crochet. Now at this point, I go ahead and snip my yarn. Again, I don't tighten anything. I don't do a slip knot there. I take the two ends now, and this is where I tie. At this point, I'm going to take those two ends and weave them into the granny cluster above to camouflage this little knot. We're getting ready to work on the Infinity Granny Square, and just as the name suggests, we're doing a traditional granny square, but to infinity. We're going to make it continuously grow from round to round to round. What we're doing is we're using what's called a granny cluster. I don't know if that's a formal term, but that's how I've heard it phrased, and it's easy to remember. All that means is we're doing 3 double crochets together to make a cluster. So that's how I'm going to refer to it as we work. To get started on round 1, we're just going to chain 4 with a slip stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slip stitch. Once you've slip stitched and formed your circle, now we're going to chain 3. We're starting our first granny cluster. And now you're going to do 2 double crochets to finish that cluster. Going into that circle. 1, 2. Now go ahead and chain 2. We're forming our first corner. Now we're going to do 3 more double crochets. Our next granny cluster. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. Another granny cluster. That's 3 double crochets. 3. Chain 2. 3 double crochets. Chain 2. And now it's time to close our round. And what I like to do is I skip that chain 3 and I move over to that little chain space for that double crochet, that second double crochet. I go ahead and slip into there, because what happens then is that slip stitch turns into the top of that first chain 3. Go ahead and clip. You're done with round 1. I tighten it with a knot like that. And now we're ready for round 2. To work on round 2, at this point, go ahead and flip your work. You're working on the wrong side now. The easy way to tell the right side and the wrong side is the bumps on the tops. Okay, when you're on the right side, you don't have those little bumps. It's kind of a smooth post. On the wrong side, you have these little bumps. You're always going to want to start on the wrong side. It's time to fasten on. Just pick any corner that you like. I like to avoid the spot where I've worked in previously, just because I like to just keep all the lumps and bumps far away from each other. Fasten on however you like best. I have a video on how to fasten on. There's some different ways to do it. I'll link that in the card here. Chain 3. We're doing corners again. All you need to remember for corners is granny cluster, chain 2, granny cluster. So 3, 2, 3. So I've already started with a chain 3 that's serving as our first double crochet. I'm going to do 2 more doubles. Chain 2. And now in that same space, do 3 more double crochets. And I'm going to go straight into that next space with the same system here. 3, 2, 3. 3 double crochets for my granny cluster. Chain 2. 3 doubles. Skipping over to the next space, we're making another corner. 3 doubles. Chain 2. 3 doubles. Okay, we have 1 more space left. You know the drill. 3, 2, 3. We finished round 2, we're coming at the end again, and we need to slip stitch to complete it. And like I did before, I like to avoid that chain 3. I just skip to the double crochet, that first real double crochet, and I go in there and slip stitch. Fasten off and get your next color. We're getting ready to work round 3, so what we're going to do is we're going to flip our work. And now we're on the wrong side again. We can see the lumps and bumps. We always want to start our next round on the wrong side. Now what you can see happening here is now we have our corners, but now we have little spaces on the sides. Our sides are starting to begin now. This is going to change with each round. We're going to start with 1 with this round. Next round you'll have 2 spaces on the side. The following round you'll have 3, and so on and so on. So in these little spaces you're just going to do your granny clusters, just 1 granny cluster. And in your corners you're going to do the 3, 2, 3. So it's 3, 2, 3, granny cluster, 3, 2, 3, all the way around. Okay, I'm just going to go into that side place. I'm slip stitching. I'm going to count that as a chain and then do 2 more. That's my first post. Now 2 double crochets. That was a side, and now I see a corner. And I'm going to do 3, 2, 3. 3 doubles, 2 chains, 3 doubles. Back to a side. So all we need to do is a cluster in that side portion there, that gap. And we're back to a corner. 3, 2, 3. And continue to the end. Okay, double check that you are on the wrong side. We want to start on the wrong side every time. We've got our little bumps here to tell us we're on the wrong side. We are ready. And really we're doing the same thing now. We're just going to go in anywhere that you want. And as you can see, we've got the 2 spaces now on the side. And like I said earlier, it's going to go from 2 to 3 to 4 and so on all the way up with your 4 corners. And you're just going to keep doing this over and over, round after round, until you get to the size of blanket that you want. You don't even have to finish it off with a border. It's beautiful just as is. As you can see with this technique that we're doing, you get such a beautiful straight edge, you don't even need to bother with a border. If you decide you want to do an infinity granny square or rectangle in the same color or the same skein with variegated colors, this is super easy. You're really just going to focus on slip stitching to get to the point where you want to continue your round. slip stitch into the gap, and chain 3. That's going to serve as your first double crochet. Now do 2 double crochets for the first side of your corner. Chain 2, and then 3 double crochets. And then just continue on as you normally would. All you need to remember to continue going around is to get yourself to the corner, just slip stitch. If you are working with one skein of yarn and you do want to flip your work back and forth, once you've finished round 1, so we're going to slip stitch into the top chain there, the visible chain, to complete that round. Chain 3, turn our work, and now we're working backwards, and we are going to do 2 double crochets into this gap here. That counts as your first side of your corner. Chain 2, 3 double crochets in that same chain 2 space. Okay, and we've worked our first corner. Now we're just going to skip over as usual, like we were doing with the Infinity Granny Square tutorial, and work our next corner. I'm going to finish this round, and then I'm going to show you how to start round 3. Okay, so I've finished round 2. Slip stitch to close, chain 3, turn, and then work 2 double crochets into that space. And then just continue on as you normally would. To make an infinity rectangle granny, it's super easy. We're going to start with 5 clusters in the center and then just build round after round off of that. I first saw this pattern on Ophelia Talks a couple of years ago. There are a lot of different variations on this, but for me, this is the simplest method and I really enjoy it. To get started, add a slip knot to your hook and chain 21. In the 6th chain from the hook, do a double crochet. In the same space, do 2 more double crochets. This is going to be your first granny cluster. Skip 2 chains, and in the 3rd one, do another cluster. Skip 2 more, and in the 3rd chain, do another granny cluster, and continue doing this until you have 3 chains left. When you've come to the end and you have 3 chains left, you should have 5 granny clusters on this row with a little bar on the side, which is going to be your corner. Add a double crochet in that very last chain, and that will make the bar and corner for your other side. We're getting ready to work round 2, and just like the granny square, I'm going to flip my work back and forth. Just like the granny square, we want to be working on the wrong side each time. We're going to be adding granny clusters in between in these spaces, and in these little bars on the end, we're going to be making our corners. We're going to be making our corners with 3 clusters, with 2 chain spaces in between. Join anywhere you like. I'm just going to start here in the middle. And I'm going to make my first granny cluster. Chain 3, 2 double crochets in that same space. I'm not putting any chains in between, I'm going straight to that space. Another granny cluster. Again in the next space. Okay, and now we've come to that bar on the end. We're going to do 3 clusters to make our corner. Let's make our first one. Chain 2. Another cluster. Chain 2. Another cluster. That's 3 double crochets. And now we're going to continue down the other side doing the same thing. We're putting clusters in every space. Cluster, 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 cluster. And then when we get to that gap, we're going to do the 3 clusters with the chain 2 spaces in between. And when you've reached the end, just slip stitch into that first cluster and round 2 is done. And flip. We're getting ready to work round 3. Make sure that you're on the wrong side of the work. You can always tell you're on the wrong side by the little bumps at the top of these stitches. On the right side, it's very smooth bands or posts. But on the wrong side, it's very lumpy bumpy. Okay, in this round, we're going to be working in these 2 spaces with corners, which means we're going to do 3, 2, 3 in these 2 spaces. We're just going to do our regular clusters all the way around, 3, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3. I prefer to start on the sides rather than the corners. That's just my personal preference. I don't know if it makes any difference or not. I just like it. Start with a chain 3 and start building your clusters. Three double crochets. And we've come to a corner and we're just going to do 3, 2, 3. 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. Okay, moving over to the other corner, 3, 2, 3. And we're back to a side, so we're just going to do the clusters in each space across until we reach the corner again. Okay, and we're at the end here, so I'm just going to slip stitch into that cluster there. And done. Okay, I've finished round 3 and I'm getting ready to work on round 4. And the main thing I want to show you with this is now on our corners or our sides, we have 2 corner spaces and a little space for a cluster. So we're going to be doing a corner, which is 3, 2, 3, a cluster, that's just 3 double crochets, and then another corner. And the sides are just the same as always. We're doing our clusters in each space. That's increasing by 1 with each round. I'm going to go ahead and fasten on and get as close to a corner as I can. I don't like starting in the corner, so I'm just going to start here, but I want to show you how to do your corners. Starting with a chain 3, 2 double crochets to complete that first cluster there. Okay, so for the corner, 3, 2, 3. And then we have that little space, so we're just going to do a cluster, 3 double crochets. and another corner, 3, 2, 3. And now just go down the sides as you normally would with your clusters in each space. Remember, it goes up by 1 each round. 5, 6, 7, and now we're doing 8. And really that is all there is to it. Let me just show you here. When you get ready to do the next round, you've got your 2 corners here. So you'll do your 3, 2, 3s in the corners. Now you have 2 spaces here. And just like the sides, that's going to keep adding. So this time you'll have 2, next row you'll have 3, 4, 5, and so on as you continue to build. But your corners will always be the same now.